Good evening, everybody. Welcome to PRD's Investment Information Evening. We've got some really terrific speakers for you tonight, so hopefully everyone gets a little bit of something out of it. There'll be an opportunity at the end of each speaker for you to ask some questions if you've got any, and then there'll be an opportunity at the end of the night as well if you ruminate on anything and need to come up with any questions. We'll start just by handing over to our founder and director, Tom Isaacs, who's going to share a couple of things with you. And then we'll roll into the wonderful Hayley Mitchell after that. Tom?
Thanks, Darren. Firstly, thanks everyone for coming along. As Darren said, we've got some terrific speakers here tonight that have a wealth of knowledge across the economic forum, mortgages and property management. And I think there will be a lot to get out of it. But before we go any further, approximately 12 months ago, we stood here and had a chat about a team initiative at PRD that we wanted to introduce to try and give back to the community that's given so much to us, and also get involved further in the community as well. And as a part of this, we came up with a program, the PRD Bendigo Community First Fund. And it was an initiative designed to bring our team together and recognise parts of our community that need financial support to help grow them and get more involved. And it's been a big journey, but as a part of it, there's a short video that I'd like to show you for something we're really passionate about, which is the Southern Cross Kids Camp. And the camp itself is a national camp, but this particular camp is held in Creswick at the Log Cabins, and it's been on this week. And it's designed to assist approximately 20 children in foster care and take them out of care for a week at a time, and actually get them involved in team building and exercises that make them feel like they're valued in the community. And these kids are only between the age of approximately 8 and 13. So we're really proud that we've been able to get involved with this. And I'll just run this short video and then have a quick chat from there. So thanks, Darren.
So Tom Isaacs here from PRD Real Estate in Bendigo. I'm really proud to be standing here at the Southern Cross Kids Camp at the Log Cabin in Creswick. And you might remember 12 months ago, almost to the day, we announced the Bendigo Community First Fund. And as a part of that, we've been able to help a lot of organisations in Bendigo through the journey. But we did make a commitment to the Southern Cross Kids Camp to assist in funding.
Well, for me, there's two reasons this week is special. The first is that we get to take 18 kids in this week away, kids who've really had a hard start to life. We get them to have fun, they have the best week of the year.
My name's Bill, and I'm a buddy from camp, and I've been going to these camps since 2016.
I'd say what keeps me coming back is the opportunity to create a space where the campers can be kids, they can be young people, they can be children, they can play games, they can have a lot of fun.
I love it. It's really rewarding to me. Obviously, I don't come here because I have to. I come here because I want to.
Have the opportunity to discover that there is more in them than they thought.
It's only possible because of the generosity of so many people, and the fact that PRD get behind us and just support us and becoming part of Bendigo Camp. It's just incredible. So we're really grateful. I always just thoroughly enjoyed having you out here to experience. Thanks for being here.
It has been fantastic, and for anyone who doesn't know a lot about Southern Cross Kids Camp, it's a really special thing. There's been some wonderful people we've had the pleasure of meeting today, and the kids here are just having a fantastic time. So we look forward to getting involved next year and getting more of the team along to experience it. So thank you again.
Can't wait. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. So for us, we actually were lucky enough. We obviously got Jack, one of our videographers, and Laurel and Adele, our general manager, to come across and spend about 4 hours and have lunch with the kids and just observe what's going on. And to be able to come back and talk to the team about the initiative that they've put in place. And this is not PRD Bendigo funding this. This is actually team members in the team sacrificing their income to actually make a contribution. So it's really pleasing. In the first year, we can say that we've raised over $80,000 through the team to actually be able to donate back to these community initiatives. And I can see that going further and further over the next few years. And that's all made possible by the local community who support us. So we really appreciate that. We're pushing as hard as we can to make this grow as quick as we can, and there's a lot of pride in it. So thank you for all attending. Have a terrific evening and ask plenty of questions. It's Q&A session, so make sure you ask any questions, nothing silly unless we ask it. Other than that, I'll hand you back to Darren and we'll proceed with the evening. Thank you.
Firstly, just to reiterate what Tom was saying, we really appreciate everyone coming tonight. I know everyone's taken up a lot of time to come out of their evenings. So our first speaker tonight is actually going to be Hayley Mitchell from Mitchell Property Management. She's the director there, founder. She's seen it all in property management. So I'm going to hand it over to her. Thanks, Hayley.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everyone for coming along. Who here is an investor? Right, hopefully you still want to be an investor by the end of this session. If not, there's a couple of salespeople here that are more than happy to chat to you. But I am a property investor and I've been in real estate for over 25 years. And I'm not selling mine, so don't sell yours after this session, but we'll see how we go. We're going to cover a whole lot of things today because we've had a lot of changes over the last few years, which I'm sure everyone's very aware of. We've got more coming November this year and in 2027. So I just want to run through some of those things with you, but I'm going to start off with a positive. So when the housing statement was released, and I don't know who here read the housing statement? Yeah, a couple of people. Yeah, so what we've been dealing with over the last few years is what has been announced in the housing statement. And one of the initiatives was the Rental Dispute Resolution Victoria, which is a pathway to keep us out of VCAT. Now, any property managers in the room will be going, yippee, because we don't want to go to VCAT. It is always a last resort. And the way it works is it's a free government service. It is part of VCAT. It provides an early, fair and less formal resolution for owners as well as renters. The process is that we have to apply. We then have to go through kind of a triage system, an assessment. We then get given a mediator that works with us from start to finish, so we don't have to deal directly with the renter. We often go through the mediation. We have that middleman trying to deal with the issue for us. If we get to an agreement, great. If we don't, we get referred to VCAT, okay? So it handles things like bond and comp, rent increases, repairs and maintenance. So one of the good things is, let's say we're at the end of a tenancy and there's damage done to carpet and paint and we're going to make a claim, and usually if you went to VCAT for bond and comp, you've got to pay for that. With RDRV, free. You don't pay for it. So I think that's good. I'm hoping it stays free. Never know with this government, but anyway. But it's been really good, and they have got things resolved in about half the time that we would have as if we went to VCAT. And the early results are a 67% success rate with all of the hearings, which means only 33% actually get escalated through to a VCAT hearing. So I wanted to start on that because I think that is one of the things that they brought out in the housing statement that I'm actually really, really happy with. And I think over time it will get better and better and better. Mandatory disclosure. So if you as a landlord are about to lease out your property or sign a renewal, you will need to fill out the mandatory disclosure. And the team at PRD will send you a disclosure form that you need to tick the boxes and fill out. And often you think, why is this my job? The property manager's job to do this. It's not. It's a landlord disclosure. So as property managers, we are tenancy managers. We don't get our hands dirty when it comes to going and fixing your plumbing. We delegate. And something like this is something that needs to be signed off by the legal owner of the property. So they can give you little bits of advice here and there, but please, when it's sent through to you, fill it out, get it back to the agent. That's all you need to do. So you need to tell the renter if you intend to sell the property while the renter will be in place. So basically what this document is doing, it's giving background information So a renter can make an informed decision about whether they want to continue with the tenancy and lease the property or not. If there's been a homicide in the last 5 years, if the property's been used for trafficking or cultivation of drug dependence in the last 5 years, if it's subject to notice order, report, safety concern, combustible cladding, something like that. If the property meets minimum standards, and I'm going to go through that one because it's a biggie, the date of all their last safety checks, are there any outstanding matters that are yet to be resolved? If it's affected by building or planning, and mould or damp in the last 3 years. So there's a series of questions, tick the boxes, make sure you get that back to your PM. These are the current minimum standards. So I took these off a Consumer Affairs Victoria checklist, and the reason I took it off there is it's really simple to read and understand, whereas their website can be a bit confusing. So bathrooms, sink, shower or bath, hot and cold water. We have to have a 3-star water efficiency shower head, but if you can't install one because your plumbing's old or you won't have enough pressure coming through, then you can drop down to a 1 or 2. Electrical safety, so modern switchboards, circuit breakers, electrical safety switches. So when you're getting your safety checks, they would have told you if you needed upgrades. So they should all be pretty on track now. Lighting, they've got to have working lights, natural light during the day, and at night there can be artificial light. Heating, fixed heater in the main living area in good working order. It's got to be energy efficient. So non-ducted air conditioner or heat pump, 2-star above energy rating, gas space heater, 2-star above energy rating, ducted heater, hydronic heater, outlet in the main living area, or a domestic solid fuel burning appliance, fireplace, wood burning stove. Mould or damp, caused by or related to the building structure. Really hard one. And the more energy efficient they're building the houses, often we have more mould and damp because we don't have that natural ventilation coming through the property as well. But it comes back to the building structure. So if we just have an issue where the renters, putting their dryer on at night, not opening doors or windows, not using the exhaust fan, that's not on Nona. But if we have an issue with the property structure, then obviously that would push back. Got to be structurally sound and weatherproof. The toilet has to be in good working order, connected to sewage or septic. It's got to be in a separate room by itself, appropriate room like a bathroom or combined bathroom laundry. Have to have a kitchen with a cooking and food prep area, sink in good working order, hot and cold water, stove top that has 2 or more burners. And if there's an oven, it has to be in good working order. So we no longer have to have an oven as a minimum standard, which I think is quite interesting. Laundry, we've got to have, if we have one, it's got to be connected to reasonable supply of hot and cold water. Locks, when this one came in, I actually said to everyone, don't touch it yet, because I think they're going to change a definition of what a deadlock actually is, and they have about 20 times. But external entry doors, other than screen doors, have to have functional deadlocks or locks that people can unlock with a key from the outside. They must be able to be opened without a key from the inside. They also have to be able to self-lock when you close them. So if you need a key to lock it from the outside, then that wouldn't be sufficient. So it has to be able to self-lock and stay locked. If there's other security barriers preventing access, you don't have to have a deadlock. So generally most locks will be okay. But we just need to make sure that we are abiding by that. Ventilation, so adequate in the bathroom, shower, toilet and laundry. We have to supply rubbish and recycling bins which are vermin proof. Window coverings, they have to be able to close, block light, maintain privacy. We now have to ensure that we've got the curtains or blinds, the cords which are tied down. So 1st of December this year that comes in. And you can order free kits from the CAV website, or you can just buy them from Bunnings. Windows, they have to have latches. The latches must secure against external entry and they have to be able to be left open or closed. Engage Victoria, I gave you a link here because I think one of the issues that we have is the government often brings out ideas about what they want to change, and not all of the changes are bad, not all are great. But what they do is they go through a whole process, and it goes through the Engage Victoria website. And what always, I guess, shocks me is that it's open for submission and everyone can have their say. And they open up these sort of things for people to give comment, and they get 2,000 comments. You know, how many landlords are there in the Victorian property market? How many real estate agents? How many tenants? They get 2,000 people that have their say. So you can jump onto the Engage website and you can register. So if they bring out more consultations on different topics, it will email you and invite you to have your say. So I do encourage that, just so if they do start bringing out different ideas, you're on top of it and you can actually say, well, I don't want this, or yes, I do. This was the latest government announcement, and this is taken off their memo that came out a little while ago. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to drive down the cost of living for renters. So part of these initiatives, which are coming in 2027 and beyond, are around these items. So energy bills is a big one. Hot water systems will be replaced with efficient heat pumps at end of life. Gas space heaters at end of life have to have reverse cycle air conditioners. 4-star water efficiency labelling system for shower heads at the start of a new lease. 5-star rated ceiling insulation at the start of a new lease where there is none present. Draft ceiling, weather seals on external doors, windows and wall vents at the start of a new lease. Main living areas have to have heating, but by 2027 at the start of your new lease, they have to have cooling as well. And obviously if you have your reverse cycle cooler, then that will be sufficient. There's going to be Victorian energy upgrade programs. There's already some out for heat pump, for hot water systems. My friend got one recently, and I think she said a normal hot water system is about $2,000. She got it for about $1,000, and she said her power bills have gone down significantly. So, you know, that you can actually get quite good rebates on those things already, but they'll bring out more obviously closer to the time. And I'm more than happy for my slideshow to be shared as well if anyone wants it. So this is what's coming. 2027. Energy efficient heating hot water systems. So when existing heater and hot water systems permanently fail, you must replace them with energy efficient ones. So energy efficient ceiling insulation and shower heads at the start of a rental agreement or a conversion from fixed to periodic. You must install a 4-star shower head and ceiling insulation where there is none and where it's possible to have it. So if you have a unit or apartment, someone above you, and there's no way you can put in insulation, you obviously don't have to. If you've got a house, open roof space, no insulation, you will need to put it in. Energy efficient cooling at the start of a new agreement or conversion to month by month. You have to put in the energy efficient cooling in the living area. It will require a 3-star fixed energy efficient cooling appliance or 2-star equivalent central cooler to be installed in the main living area. If there's an existing fixed non-energy efficient cooler appliance, it must be upgraded to an energy efficient system at end of life. From 2030, every property has to have it. So regardless of when a rental agreement has, expired, or, you might have a long-term periodic renter where the trigger has not been met by a lease, you will still have to put in the energy efficient cooling by 2030. Okay, so just be prepared for that. Draft proofing. So conversion to a month-by-month agreement, external doors, windows and unsealed wall vents. Rebates, so there is the Victorian Energy Upgrades Program, and rebates for ceiling insulation will be expected by early 2026. And exemptions, sometimes compliance with the standards not possible or would incur unreasonable cost. For example, apartments where heating, cooling or hot water is supplied through centralised systems. It could be that, you're on the 3rd floor and you need scaffolding and it's going to cost 10 grand to put in a split system. There'll be ways around it. But we're waiting to have everything 100% finalised on that one. Your safety checks, which you should all be pretty used to now, hopefully. So gas safety checks every 2 years. If it hasn't been done in the last 2 years at time renter occupiers, it has to be done. Electrical, licensed or registered electricians, and again, it's got every 2 years. Smoke alarms every 12 months, and broken smoke alarms are considered an urgent repair. You must also provide evidence to renters on request, disclose the date of the last check on your mandatory disclosure document, including any outstanding recommendations from the tradie as well. So just make sure that when you're filling out your mandatory disclosure, you put in the dates and the information from the last check. That's something that the property manager would be able to help you with as well. But just remember that has to be put on there. The other thing is smoke alarms will need to be done every 12 months regardless of lease start date. So that's something that's coming as well, as has to be done by a qualified person. We're not going to be able to, there's some landlords that still want to go and do them. They're not going to be allowed to in the future. So we're just waiting for that to roll out too. So the Housing Statement Reform Bill, this was part of the changes that we've got coming towards the end of this year. So the end of fixed term tenancy notice to vacate is disappearing. So what that means is it was our last opportunity to give a renter a notice to vacate for no reason. It wasn't always successful at VCAT because you've always got a reason. You're not just going to ask a perfect tenant to move out. So it was never used a lot, but it is a little challenging in certain situations where we really want to move a renter on, but you don't want to sell the property or move into it or change your use or renovate or demolish. So we are going to have to probably rely a little bit more on our rent arrears procedure and our breach notices if we've got a renter that's not quite making the mark and we don't want to continue with them. There's going to be changes to reviews of rent increase criteria by CAV and VCAT. They haven't told us what they are yet, so that's fun. But this is all coming in November this year. Extensions, notice of rent increase, notice to vacate 90 days. So at the moment, if we want to, I know the guys sell a property and they do what's the normal settlement term for a tenanted 90 days?
69 days.
Yeah, so if you're wanting to get vacant possession, instead of doing a 90-day settlement term, you're probably going to want to push it out to 120, which would allow 90 days plus service and any challenges to come up to enable the properties vacant for settlement. Same with rent increases. You've got a 12-month lease. We usually review the rent at the 9-month mark, which gives us 30 days of negotiating plus 60 days of service or notice. We're going to have to start reviewing them at 120 days before the end of lease, which is challenging for us as property managers because we usually do them in line with the routine inspection, but we're going to have to do it before we can even get through for our second routine. Change your process, but we'll get used to it. But remember, if you want to move into your property, sell the property, change your use, it's going to be minimum 90 days notice as of November this year. One of the big ones that we really have to consider is the minimum standards I read to you before. We have to make sure that every property meets those minimum standards prior to advertising. Whereas at the moment, they only have to meet minimum standards prior to a new tenant moving in. So we had the leasing period and the vacancy period to get the properties up to scratch. So we have to really consider that. If we have a breach of minimum standards and if CAB gets involved and serves a notice, it's a 60 penalty unit fine, which is one penalty to unit at the moment is $205. So it's about $12,000 fine. So we as agents need to protect ourselves and you. So if you don't think your property meets those standards, I highly recommend getting an external company in to do a check, to tick a report to say you meet the standards, and then you're good to go. If you have a brand new property and you know it's perfect, tick the boxes on your mandatory disclosure and off you go. Okay, so just think about it though. When you're signing forms and doing documentation, there's a process that we need to follow to make sure that you're not breaching and that you're keeping your property safe. There's going to be a ban on rent payment fees and rental bidding. So at the moment, we can't solicit a higher offer of rent, but we can accept it. Under November's legislation, we can't accept it. So it's going to be illegal for a renter to offer, illegal for us to accept. And there's higher fines on that one, I think. I think that's 80 penalties. I think they put that up. So if we put the property on as $350 a week, we get $350 a week. Right? We don't get $360, we don't get $370, it's $350. Restrictions and enhanced protection on rental application data, plus a new standard rental application that we have to use. It's coming out in November. We still don't have it, but it will be coming soon. And we're going to have mandatory licensing, registration, training and CPD requirements for all real estate agents. So we haven't had that before. Anyone that holds a real estate licence in Victoria will have to go through extra training, and that training has to be registered CPD. Like, that's okay with me as long as it's good training. So the CAB task force, this was brought out by Consumer Affairs. Has everyone seen this on the news? Anyone? A couple of you? Yeah. So they've been out, they go and do targeted inspections, so they're looking at safety, minimum standards disclosure, looking at advertising and letting, making sure that photos and descriptions match what we're putting out to the public. Underquoting's a huge one. They've been going hard at that for a few years. Illegal bonds and not doing condition reports. Inspections and audits to make sure that, you know, the safety checks are correct. So they're actually going to properties, checking the work of some of the safety providers and then checking the checks and everything as well to make sure they're all good. They can issue warnings, infringement notices or escalate serious matters to VCAT or the courts, and they work alongside enforcement to educate owners and agents about responsibilities as well. I think that's here to stay. The underquoting task force it's a permanent fixture now, and I wouldn't be surprised if we find the rental task force is here to stay as well. Any questions? Shall I ask the question again about who wants to sell? Or no? No? Anyone got any questions? Yes?
With the advertising of property that's not meeting minimum standards, does that extend, like we don't know if it's going to be electrically compliant, for example? Is it just those literal minimum standards, or does it extend to your gas and electrical?
No, it is only what's under the 15 or 14 minimum standards. So your safety checks are separate, and often people get the safety and the minimum standards intertwined, and they're separate. So no, it's only the minimum standards. Yeah. Someone else? Yeah.
With the cooling thing for the living areas, you know, is like evaporative cooling, like 3-star cooling, or are they going to make you want to put like a split system in?
Look, we don't know yet. They haven't actually said. I mean, I would assume it would be part of it, but yeah, we need to wait and see what they roll out, because they've given us some parameters, but not a lot yet. We're still waiting. Yep. Anyone else? Yeah.
First of all, it's good to see that real estate agents will have to do training. That's good.
Yep. Yep.
With the rental bidding, this is something that's come, I guess, up a bit lately. But what is the theory? Well, I do get the theory. It's like, cut it off. Don't make it too hard for people to get in. But if you have a think about it, and there's like, say, a family that apples for apples compared to someone else, it might not be as an advantageous tendency for them to go in as just 2 single people that are working. For them to be able to offer an extra $10 or $20 a week could be something that could get them over the line. You said actually having a negative impact by...
Yeah, I actually do. And I also think as agents, we're going to go top price first. Whereas before, sometimes you could go, okay, well, I'll put it towards the top of my range, but then if you got a higher offer, you're like, okay, well, maybe I underpriced it slightly. So I actually think prices will go up a little bit for people, because you've got You can only go down, you can't go up. And I rented years ago and I had a dog and I said, I'll give you an extra $10 a week and an extra $500 on the bond, because we could then. And they said, yeah, no problem, I got the property, whereas I wouldn't have got it otherwise. So,
That's
yeah.
what I mean, it just seems a bit...
Yeah, they just want to make it an even playing field for everyone. And they say if the price is the price, that's what it is. But yeah, it's been... I don't think it's a good change, personally. I think if someone wants to offer more, they should be allowed to offer more. I don't think we should go out and bid them, and ask for it, but I think we should be able to accept it if they offer. But we're not going to be allowed to. And that includes rent in advance. So, let's say you sell your property and you cashed up and you've never rented for 30 years and you offer a year's rent in advance to secure we can't accept that either. So you could accept it in month 2, because it's not then subject to an application. They could just pay extra, but you couldn't accept it on application. Yeah, crazy. Any other questions? Yep.
You said that there's companies that will do the minimum standard checks. Do you have any recommendations?
Do you guys have a company you use?
Dale and Darren Incorporated.
Dale and Darren?
Yeah.
PM, who's recommended at the moment?
To do minimum standards or safety checks.
Both.
Safety checks is central heating and cooling.
Yep.
At the moment, we have a checklist of minimum standards that we do on a commission report, and that's scanned in with all the commission report and all the paperwork as well. So when we do a commission report, we tick off they've got the window anchors, they're at a certain height, or the hot pole taps working, just things like that. We're not 100% sure on the 5-star the shower heads, because I can't see what's in it.
Yep.
So we're not 100% sure about that.
Yeah.
But everything else is very clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, you can do them yourself, and there is a COV form that you can download. So you can definitely do that. I use a company in Geelong, and I know that they charge $150, and they're looking at what's coming in 2027 as well. So they're getting in the roof and checking the insulation, and that's something you guys, hopefully, are not going to do. No. So, that's where I think planning ahead is really important, because 2027 is going to be here before we know it. So if you pay $150, get someone out, does it all, gives you a report, gives you a plan for 27, that way you can budget and work out exactly what you need. I can give you those details. They work all over. Happy to share that. Any other?
I've got one for you.
Yeah,
At the moment,
good.
we're seeing a lot of investors push into our market through buyers agents.
Oh, yes.
And it's prolific. So,
Yeah, it is.
So these are buyers agents on behalf of clients that are external generally to Bendigo, and they're really driving that investment market up.
Yeah.
In an age of TikTok and influencers and people just generally making things up.
I might be too old to know TikTok, but anyway.
I think you're through that space. When you're in front of a property manager, or you're interviewing a property manager you've just bought, because this is prolific at the moment.
Yeah.
What questions are you asking to make sure that, one, the business itself is up to date and understands minimum standards and service levels and is proactive? And two, what are your expectations? Because I think we've gone past the world of I'm a property manager to I'm a relationship manager.
Yeah.
And I'm on the journey about your product and what success you're trying to have. So when you're interviewing, how's that look?
Yeah, you've just got to get someone who feels like they're part of your team and that they're going to take the time to understand exactly what you want to get out of the property as well. Because you might buy a property and have a 2-year plan, or you might buy a property and say this is 20 years and this is what I want, and that's a very different conversation. What we do as property managers now compared to 25 years ago is off the charts. Like, we literally used to just collect rent, do the odd routine, sign up leases if a renter asks for it, and do a rent review if someone asks for it. We're really reactive. And what we are now is proactive, because we have to be, because everyone wants to sue us, and we want to make sure that we keep owners safe and compliant. So I think asking more about longevity, how long they've been with the company for, what the company goals are, what is their plan when it comes to these changes, because there's so many companies that still are not doing mandatory disclosure. They're still not doing safety. They're still not doing all the things that they have to do, and they're about to go down because they're on top of it now. So that would be my biggest thing. Make sure you've got someone who's a partner and someone that will actually guide you in the right direction to keep your property safe and therefore money making at the end of the day as well. Yeah, but as buyers agents, they're huge at the moment. They're everywhere, which is great, but we've got to make sure we've got the right properties. Yeah. Any other questions? I don't think I scared them too much. I think they're all right.
Too much knowledge.
There you go.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time coming in today, and the knowledge. I don't think we can quite explain how much knowledge and time that Hayley's spent in the industry. So really appreciate your time. Round of applause. Just touching on that conversation about a property manager's role now. It has changed so much over the years, and we used to have property managers walk into the business and you'd hear someone turn around and think, across this one, what do you do for a living? I'm just a property manager. I'm just a property manager. And a lot of these property managers are looking after $150 million or $200 million worth of assets for people, and now they are providing significant guidance and advice on the journey of someone's investment journey as well. And it's really important that you do select an individual and a business that's across this stuff, because as much as we have an obligation, unfortunately we are having to hand back properties to owners at the moment that aren't compliant because our exposure increases dramatically. And a lot of people just think that if you have an owner say it's okay, you know it's not being done, and we write that on the system and protect ourselves, we're not protected. So it is really important that going forward everyone is across this, and we are seeing significant sales of real estate businesses to consolidate their books because they don't have the engine to be able to get in behind this and provide the advice as well. So thank you again for your time. Next up, we do have Jason and his team from Millennial Finance. They're a local mortgage broking business that is well across the industry in all facets, whether it be residential investment, general mortgage, asset finance, agri-finance. So they're a wealth of knowledge, and Jace said he has an amazing presentation for us. And I only say that because Jace has been kind enough to fill in for us. We had a late withdrawal. So thanks for your time, Jace. We'd love to hear what you've got to say.
Thank you. At about 4 o'clock, I drove home from work and got out of the jeans and T-shirt to put something a little bit more formal on for tonight. But yeah, so my name's Jace Leatham from Millennial Finance. We've got Sam Heaviside here and Dale Cameron. These guys are both mortgage brokers. So Millennial Finance is about 5 years old. We manage about $1 billion in lending across Bendigo and the Sunshine Coast, so 2 offices. About half of that is home lending, so for owner-occupiers and investors. We didn't prepare a slideshow or anything. What I did mention to Tom was that we just talk on probably a couple of points, ones that we think are, I don't know if they're hot topics, but something that quite generally comes up. It'll be a little bit around tax. So one of the biggest problems that I guess that I see when people come to us, we'll talk about borrowing power, or how you can borrow the most amount of money, because with interest rates where they are at the moment, that's probably another point. And then we might touch on maybe Airbnb versus long term. I was just thinking about that when we were talking about you don't really need to be as fully compliant, I don't think, with Airbnbs as you do with long term. Was there any points that anyone came here hoping to get out of tonight that are specific to lending? No? Good. I think we'll cover it. So, over the years, probably one of the most common problems that I would see when people come along to borrow money for a house or an investment property is they'll book an appointment, come in, and they go, "This is awesome. We've paid out our loan. It's fully paid out, and now we're going to buy our dream home that we're going to move into. So we've bought an investment property or a property designed to be an investment property for say $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000. Mum and Dad have told us to pay it down, so we've paid it out. We now owe nothing on it, and we want to come and borrow $1 million to go into our owner-occupied house. What that effectively means is that you've now got no deductible debt. So from a tax point of view, we can't deduct that, and we've got $1 million liability that's 100% not deductible. So depending on how creative your accountant is, and there is one in the room here I can see tonight, but a lot of the time we'll call an accountant and say, this is what the person's done, this is what we're, and half the time they'll just say, oh, that's bad luck, there's nothing we can do about it. And they won't look to raise any new debt or debt that you can consider deductible. So without going too far into that, I'll just say that before you plan on doing that, maybe don't always 100% listen to mum and dad. Not don't listen, but just, back in the day it was... back in the day it was pay your loans out, you don't want debt. Fast forward to today, debt isn't bad if it's structured correctly. So was there any questions on that point there?
James, reduction of debt. If you've got your owner-occupied home and an investment property, what are you trying to reduce?
The owner-occupied debt.
Why?
Because when there's debt raised and being able to be used against an investment property, so like a business, you've got your income, so your rent, minus your expenses equals your profit or loss. The amount of interest that's being deducted against that is your cost. So if you don't owe any money on that property, but you owe a lot of money on your owner-occupied, that cost can't be associated with your investment properties. So the higher the debt or the more that you can use is better in theory for tax. It also helps with borrowing power as well, because all of the banks will take into account negative gearing for serviceability. Did we have any other questions about that and how that all works?
So Jace, is the accountant in the room probably.
Yeah.
A lot of questions about the concept of debt recycling. Is that something you can explain a little bit to the people?
Yes, so I have noticed on Facebook a lot lately, all of these seminars popping up saying, you'll have your loan paid out in 7 years and so forth. Debt recycling, are you meaning withdrawing new debt out against equity to invest in the other avenues to then utilise those funds?
Just explain how that works in lending term behind the scenes.
Did you want to explain how that one works, bro?
We've got small loans.
Well, there's definitely a few ways around it. You're talking around purely if you're fully leveraged and paying debt down off owner-occupied to then reutilise.
I guess more generally the concept of having what you're calling good debt, bad debt, and the ability to shift it from being bad debt to the good debt using equity.
Yeah, and paying tax in the course of doing that, or...
Well, tax is a part of the journey, we've all got to accept tax.
Well, if I was to split out just two instances of where I've seen someone do something recently, it might be that you have, say you've got no investment loan and $1 million home loan. You may chip away at that and pay it down with after-tax funds and then borrow against that property, which you can then reutilise those funds for an investment, whether it's property or even purchasing shares or something or other, where you can use those funds to pay tax to then reduce your debt further. There's other ways where someone might have a whole lot of equity available that's not drawn, and they can actually take out an investment loan against that to acquire shares or investment property or something like that, utilise the funds to pay that down.
I think the important part in that to realise is that the interest deduction actually still falls on the investment side. It's not coming back to the home, basically. So the
lend itself to overuse for the purposes of an asset.
Yeah.
A capital asset.
So you can't just sell the shares and keep the debt and so forth. Yeah. I think the very important thing to do there is to be pretty clear with your accountant about it, because if you do read the ATO rules and regulations on it, it's actually really specific about how it needs to be done, with what bank accounts need to be set up, how the transfers need to be done, that needs to be kept separate and so forth. So I think if you are planning on doing it, a clear strategy with the accountant or financial planner into your debt strategy is very important. Did you want to go on to trust lending? Yeah. Thanks.
Hi everyone, my name's Sam. We were just chatting before we came today what really limits investors, and particularly maybe once you purchase your third or fourth investment property, we see a really common trend, and it's your borrowing capacity. That's the thing that really lets you down from being able to continue to invest from a residential point of view. So I just wanted to have a chat about a couple of different ways that you can help with that borrowing capacity, and that's by setting up a company or a trust to purchase property. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One might be that mum and dad have an owner-occupied property that they've paid off that's worth $1 million, and that they purchased 2 new investment properties. Let's say they funded it at 100% plus costs. So $500,000 purchase, both loans would be at $525,000 roughly once you pay your stamps. In that example, if you're then going to purchase your third investment property, you're having to service your $1,050,000 worth of debt. The other example would be that you purchase investment property 1 and 2 in a trust. You put in your 20% plus costs either through cash or by borrowing against your existing owner-occupied property. So that might be your $125,000. Put your $400,000 in the company or trust. Then when you go to purchase that third investment property, you're then only having to service your 2 $125,000 loans, which is $250,000 worth of debt compared to your $1,050,000. Does that make sense? Is that what people have heard of before? Or?
So does that mean the actual house that you're living in, that you paid $1 million for, is become like tax deductible in that sense too, or not? Under a trust.
So the original house you purchased, that's probably going to be in your individual name still. It'd be the investment properties that you purchase. You'd have to speak to your accountant, but I have seen that loan that you do take out in your individual name, that can be tax deductible.
It can be if you're buying equity into whatever entity you're going into. But just something to watch out for those structures where I see on the other side of it after they've been set up, is if you've got a situation where the property's negatively geared within a trust, the tax advantage is pretty much lost because you can't transfer a loss out of a trust to use against your other source of income, so if you're a salary and wage earner. So it can almost quarantine the tax advantage for a period of time until it becomes a positively geared investment. So something to consider in that structure.
Yeah, which we're seeing a lot of clients do with Airbnb properties, which hopefully with the 80%, I guess, that it might be positively geared in the future, which also has its tax benefits that you might be able to distribute it to where you need, I guess.
So ultimately, what you're saying is you need to get an accountant.
Accountant and broker.
To Brad's point there, with getting it, if you just said, I just want to make sure that I get the best tax advantages immediately, it might be, we'll do this, don't borrow any money. But if you've got a longer term plan to acquire 5, 10, 15 properties, be able to, move away and go and work part-time, for instance, and as the property values go up and the earnings on those go up, whether you want to sell some properties to pay out some of that debt, there are specific ones that you may look to sell first. So if you've got a longer term plan in plan, it's not tax savings right now, then what we're talking about here is how you can actually get access to the most level of debt, not necessarily the best tax advantage at that point in time. But yeah, what Brad's saying is obviously right. He's an accountant. it's just hard to get it all in the borrower or homeowner's favour. The ATO and the banks make sure of that. Did we have any more questions about that? Yep.
When you mean a trust, do you mean like a self-named super fund trust, or do you mean like I've heard like a bear trust and things like that?
Oh, probably more just a discretionary trust or a property trust, where the other thing that you want to consider there is having a corporate trustee instead of an individual. When you are the individual trustee for a trust, banks will always pigeonhole that as your debt and your liability. And what Sam was talking about, where we're able to try and exclude a liability based on a corporate ownership, goes away.
So I've got a question.
Yeah.
An accounting question itself. Would that be the same then for a family trust, is having a corporate trustee instead of individual trustees for a family trust?
Yeah. What a bank will do is they'll go, well, if we send in an application and it's for you, for instance, but then it asks for what liabilities you're responsible for. If there's ABC Proprietary Limited as trustee for the ABC Trust, not every time, but banks are more likely to say, okay, ABC Proprietary Limited is responsible for those liabilities and that. We don't need to worry about that. But if it's you individually as trustee for ABC Trust, they'll say, no, named, we need to consider all of those. That's not foolproof. Just
that's all right.
generally if you're trying to, how we try and work around it is if you are set up corporate, you're more likely to be able to exclude different liabilities and so forth. Any other? Yeah, sorry, just with Airbnb, if you can get it at 2 times your standard rent and get a good property manager, generally your return is stronger and your return on equity, so the amount of cash you've got in the property is a greater return. Bendigo, the numbers that we hear from a lot of the guys that do manage property, is one of the better sort of regions in Australia for Airbnb. Not that you're getting the highest prices for a summer peak, but just generally throughout the year, it's quite a good market just with a lot of what comes to Bendigo on that. So it's not a bad investment. With Airbnb, there is a bit of a myth that banks won't utilise any of the income. It's not entirely true. More and more banks are coming out saying that they'll use Airbnb income, whereas they might not use 80% of income, they might use 70%, but 70% of Airbnb income is generally about 100% of what you get on a long-term amount if considering that. So there are options for it.
What suburbs of Bendigo are best for Airbnb?
It's a good question because a few of the guys that I've known, like for instance, I remember one property manager, their best house was in Eaglehawk, but it was because it was a massive house and it made the most money for those guys. What are Clifton Partners?
Generally CBD.
Yeah, CBD or close to would be the best. Yeah, so hospitals, trains, those sort of areas around the theatre district.
Thank you, mate. Thanks, Dave. Really appreciate it. For transparency's sake,
You're gonna have to get a graph out to everyone, mate.
For it, so you can imagine the shit show that goes on when they get in the room. So I come up with a stupid idea, they slightly agree with me, and he stops it all. So, and I stand back and just watch the fallout from it. So, but what it does say, I guess, and I'm certainly not an expert in the field like these guys are, but it does say, make sure you do your homework and you've got the right people in your corner. And you also want to have people that'll push the boundaries but pull back as well, because you're setting up a long-term journey. It's not about having someone that you talk to every 12 months. It's about someone that you can call on and have a conversation about, hey, this is the change that's happening financially or personally. How does that look with the goals we've got? And those goals, Bradley attested to this with myself, they change every 24 hours. We set them for 5-10 years and every day they change. So set the goal and try and stick to it, but be comfortable changing it. So
Next up, we are very fortunate to have Dr. Asti from PRD. Now, PRD stands, for those who don't realise, Property Research and Development. PRD cut its teeth historically in this space, and for us to have Dr. Asti here is an incredible privilege. She's a very good speaker and very good wordsmith. The short history, I guess, on Asti, she's been with PRD for some time, but for 10 years. And Asti's credentials are as good as you're going to see across Australia. Asti sits on the board of advisors with the RBA frequently and leads a lot of research papers across Australia for other organisations. So we'll welcome Asti and get some really, really great insights into what's happening from a macro and a micro level. Thanks, Asti.
Hello. Is that coming through? I know. You just had to butter me up so much, right?
You're doing self.
Hi, everyone. Okay, how do I do things? First thing that I ask, how do I do things? Awesome. Thank you, Tom and the PRD Bendigo team for putting this together. And thank you so much for everyone for being here. I know that it's a school night, so I will definitely keep this as succinct as possible. As Tom says, my name's Dr. Asti Mariasmo. I think, do I just click that? Yep. So I am the Chief Economist for PRD. So what that means is that I lead the National Research Department for the whole PRD network across the country. So when it comes to research, my job is, in very simple terms, to know about every single residential real estate market in every suburb in the country. That's literally probably the best way to simplify what it is that I do. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about where we're at in terms of the economy, because we do see and we do hear a lot in the media about whether there's going to be a crash, whether the RBA is going to cut the cash rate, whether they're going to hold it stable, if there's a property boom, if we're in a bubble, if there's going to be, you know, a market crash or a share crash because Trump might be doing something, China might be doing something else, Russia might be doing something else, how is Australia responding? All of these things are swirling around in the media. So one of the things that I do, as Tom says, is I do sit on the Liaison Board group, board for Reserve Bank of Australia. And what I do there is actually give, this is what's happening around the traps. This is the on-the-ground economic things that we're seeing as residential real estate people. And also, because of that, then they take into consideration any of the advice that we might give on this is what's actually happening with most people in the country in terms of what they then do with the cash rate. So I'm very fortunate to be able to advise them on this. And of course, also then they give us a little bit of insight as to, well, this is how we're seeing the economy right now. And because of that, this is what we're going to do, whether it's increasing the cash rate, cutting the cash rate, or keeping it stable. So a little bit of the economy, real estate update across the country. I love doing things that are across the country and then comparing it to what's happening locally in Bendigo, just to give everyone a little bit more of that wider scope of what's happening across the country and the world as well. Now, I know this is an investor night, but I just wanted to touch on very quickly some things that are happening in the first home buyer space in case there's anyone whose family members, friends, etc. are looking to buy for the first time, and then just moving forward on what we can expect. So where are we now in the economy? Now, there's a lot of talk, like I said, in media about whether or not there's going to be a recession, whether or not we're going to hold steady, what is going to happen in the Australian economic trade because of everything that is happening outside of Australia and within Australia itself. This is one of my favorite graphs to explain whether or not we're going to be okay. And at the moment, as a general, the economy is holding quite resilient and okay. And you'll see the reason why I've put okay in, what are these things called? That's it, in inverted commas, right? Because at the moment, most Australians have positive equity. No one is in this part here that is negative equity. Negative equity simply means that if you are in debt, so if you have a home loan, if you have a mortgage, if you sell your assets, if you sell your home, you cannot cover your mortgage. At the moment, most of Australia, if you have a mortgage, you have a loan, you're in trouble for whatever reason, you sell that home, you sell that asset, you can still cover the mortgage, right? So either you break even or you come away with a little bit of money if you hold it for like 5 years, 7 years, what have you, but you can still cover that mortgage. So from that perspective, and also coupled with the fact that our unemployment rate is still 4.3%, which is one of the lowest that we've seen. GDP growth is about 1 to 2%, a bit low. Normally we travel at about 5 to 6%, but it's kind of standard around the world at the moment. Most economies around the world are around 2 to 3%, so we're tracking around kind of the same with a lot of other countries. And our wage growth is at about 3 to 4%. It's actually better than pre-COVID because pre-COVID, our wage growth is about 1 to 2%. Now it's about 3 to 4%. So when you line up all of those things together, it kind of paints what the RBA will call a Goldilocks economy, because it kind of paints a golden picture that most Australians, if they're ever in trouble with their mortgages, their loans, etc., they can sell their homes or their asset, they can cover it. There's wage growth where people are earning money. There's employment where people can get jobs. Our GDP growth is pretty much the same as every other country around the world. So that's why it's called a Goldilocks golden halo sort of economy. But it comes at a cost. And the cost of that is our savings, right? So when we came out of COVID, most Australians had a lot of savings. And that's because we couldn't travel to Europe, we couldn't travel to Bali, we couldn't go out, we couldn't do all of the things that we love to do. So we saved. But then we had 13 cash rate hikes, which meant that for many people, suddenly they have to find an extra 1,000, 1,500, sometimes even 2,000 to be able to pay their mortgages on a month-to-month basis. The cost of living also went up, right? So to make ends meet, a lot of Australians had to delve, they had to dip into their savings, which meant that the savings rate kept on going down, down, down. And no, I'm not promoting Coles. Every single time I say that, I have to say that, because I've been caught out by media before of me saying that, and suddenly they're like, that is a Coles IP, you're not allowed to say that. So at the moment, we actually have the lowest savings rate in history. And that's because, as Australians most do, we prioritise being able to cover our mortgage. We prioritise being able to cover our rent. We prioritise being able to cover all of our bills and all of that. And that's why you dip into your savings, right? So at the moment, we have that lowest savings rate. So the fact that most borrowers, all borrowers, only less than 1% of borrowers is in potentially some sort of trouble in terms of servicing their mortgages is because we're sacrificing our savings. If we didn't sacrifice our savings, this bit here, where all borrowers might be in trouble that is less than 1%, would have been much, much higher. So it's almost like, that's why I said it's a resilient economy, because it's resilient because we've all given up pretty much a lot in terms of our savings. So that's where we sit at the moment. How are we all feeling? This is one of my favorite graphs. So this basically tells us whether we feel confident or not in the economy, whether we feel okay with our finances, whether we feel okay to spend money instead of saving. So when COVID hit, our confidence dropped super low, and we all kind of felt, nah, not the time to save, not the time to spend, time to save. A lot of people lost their jobs, etc. Coming out of COVID, everyone thought, yep, now's a great time to spend. Now we can go out again, we can go to Bali again, we can go have dinners again, we can have outdoor barbecues again, all of that kind of stuff, right? Cash rate hike happened and cost of living started to go up, so our confidence started to go down. And now, I'm just going to do this so that it shows, like I'm trying to play with it. And now it's starting to go back up again because the inflation rate or the cost of living have started basically its lowest at the moment. Because when this happened, our inflation rate was about 8%, and now our inflation rate is about 2.1, 2.2%. So we're feeling a little bit better, which is why it says there it's 95.4 index points as of September. This is the latest data that literally came out. I was so happy. It came out 3 days ago, so I was able to update this graph for you. I was so happy that it came out on time because sometimes they don't. 95.4 index point, which is definitely better than 12 months ago. It was at 84.6. But it still means that we're quite cautious because a positive reading is 100 points, and we're not quite at 100 points yet. So yes, we're okay to spend money for whatever reason that we want to, but at the same time, we're also still just a little bit cautious about how we spend the money. So in real estate terms, most real estate agents are seeing, yes, buyers are out, investors are there, they want to get into the market, but they're also quite cautious about making sure that it's the best deal for them. So when I was talking about the cash rates and inflation rates, this is the inflation rate that the RBA makes their decision on, whether or not they're going to cut the cash rate, keep it stable, or increase it. Their mandate is to keep this between 2 and 3%. That's their mandate, 2 to 3, that's it, right? If it gets closer to 3, possibility of being held stable. If it goes over 3 and even closer to 4, a possibility of a cash rate hike, as in actually going up. If it's still on that lower end of the 2%, higher possibility of a cash rate cut. Right? So that's kind of like your range. Now I put these two up because these two figures are completely different in the sense that this is quarter, so that's 3 months worth of prices, whereas this one behind me is monthly, right? Now the RBA does not make their decision based on this one. They make their decision based on this one. The reason being is that on a month-to-month basis, things can happen. That inflation rate is going to go up when it's Christmas because we're all going to be buying Christmas presents, right? Or it might be an election month and no one spends anything because they don't know what government is going to do, if they're going to increase taxes, and everybody just doesn't spend. So they make their decision based on that one. Now, there is an RBA meeting next week on 29th of September, which is a Monday, yes? And then Tuesday, the 30th of September, so it's 2 days, 29th and the 30th. A lot of people are asking me, is there going to be another cash rate cut? My answer is this. The RBA makes a decision based on that one. They've already made a decision based on this one in August. So what they want to do now is to make sure that they know the September 2025 quarter figure before they make another cash rate call. And if their meeting is next week on the 29th and the 30th, The chances of a new data for September quarter 2025 is almost none because the quarter hasn't closed yet. So that's your clue. Okay, that's your clue. I'm not going to say the definite because, like, you know, if I say definite and it doesn't happen, so I'm just going to say that's your clue. Okay? So what trends are we seeing in real estate? At the moment, across the whole world, this is where we're at. Australia have seen a massive increase in median house price. The reason being is because simply we just don't have enough houses for everybody. And at the moment, if you compare it with everyone else in this whole thing, where Australia sits here is that we're one of the more expensive real estate markets in the world. So we're more expensive. I love this. This is really good for me to point at stuff. We're more expensive than New Zealand, the UK, Canada. What's purple? South Korea, Japan, and Norway. So we are definitely one of the more expensive one across the world. And like I said, it's simply because we just don't have enough houses. And you'll see in another couple of slides, I believe, that even units are tracking really, really well right now, sometimes even better than houses in certain capital cities across Australia, because we've got house buyers with house budget who can't find stock or who can't find the house in an area that they like. What they can find is a townhouse or a unit. So they're bringing that house budget into a townhouse or a unit pricing and increasing that price up to be able to actually secure that unit. So on a month-to-month basis, in terms of housing price growth across the country, like I said, it's starting to go up and quite significantly. There's actually quite a steep hike there when it comes to house price growth, which basically, again, ties in with the fact that, you know, we're now one of the more expensive real estate across the world. In terms of rental growth, now this graph here is a little bit misleading. I will completely admit it. I've told the RBA that it is, because that graph shows not the actual rental price, but the rental price growth. And that's why it's showing a slowdown. Because before, when rental markets were really, really tight, rental price was growing at like $70, $80, $100, maybe $120, right? Whereas now it's stabilized a little bit, so it's growing at $20, $30, $40. So the price itself is still high, but the growth of it is slower than before. So that graph, like I said, is a little bit misleading, but that's what it's saying when it comes to the rental market right now. So in terms of in terms of housing prices, this is the one that I was telling you about. So if we look at where I live, which is Brisbane, this data is as of the 1st of September, which means that it's one of the more updated ones. The next one will be from the 1st of October. But Brisbane at the moment is tracking at $1 million. Price growth is 7.3. But as you can see, the unit growth in Brisbane is much higher at 11% than the 7%. Right? Simply because there aren't enough houses in Brisbane. And so people with house budgets have come to the unit market and bought or jacked up the price in the unit market. We're seeing that the same thing in Adelaide, 6.4 for houses, but 7.7 for units, right? Again, in Perth, 6.3% for houses, 10% for units. So we're seeing it in certain capital cities now where the unit price growth is actually higher than the house price growth, even though from a dollar perspective, units are still about 30-35% cheaper than houses. For Melbourne, 2.1% growth, which is not a strong Melbourne. Melbourne normally tracks much higher than 2.1%, and which is why, you know, at the moment, my little Brisbane have become a little bit more expensive than Melbourne. However, from a regional perspective, so that's the whole of regional Victoria, 2.8% growth for the whole of regional Victoria, which is definitely much stronger than Melbourne, and of course at a median price that is about 40% cheaper than Melbourne. So I guess regional Victoria is definitely where it's at, right? In terms of days on market, a lot of people ask me about this, whether or not the market is moving fast or whether it's moving slow. So we've got the data. If I have a look at Bendigo, for example, in the last quarter that we know, which is Q2, so that's from January, February, March, so that's April, May and June. Days on market for the whole of Bendigo Local Council is about 58 for both houses and units. A little bit slower than 3 years ago, which is when the market just coming out of COVID and it was super, super fast, but definitely better than pre-COVID. And we can see exactly the same pattern in Melbourne, a little bit stickier than 3 years ago, but definitely better than pre-COVID. That happens in Brisbane. It also happens in Sydney. So basically across the whole country, on all different capital cities, as well as the Bendigo market, the market is just slightly slower than 3 years ago, but definitely better than pre-COVID. So why Bendigo? I feel like you should be the one talking about this, Tom.
I'll do a postscript.
I feel like you know this better than me, right? So I love talking about these next slides. And the reason why I love talking about these next slides is because we do these next slides pretty much for every single suburb, every single postcode, every single local council across Australia. So whatever slides that you see in the next 5 slides, the information can be replicated for any suburb in the whole of Australia. So if for whatever reason, Bendigo is not your thing, or Bendigo is not where you want at the moment, or it's an option for you, but you want to know, okay, what's happening in the Gold Coast, or what's happening in Ballarat, or what's happening in Brisbane, or what's happening in Perth, what's happening in Hobart, what's happening in Darwin, what's happening in Adelaide, any of those places, the next few slides that I'm going to show you can be replicated for those areas. Okay, so keep that in mind. So in terms of why Bendigo, very simple. Bendigo is the red, Melbourne is the purple. I'm the kind of person, because being an analyst, I sometimes don't even look at numbers. The reason why I don't look at numbers is because it can change at any time, right? If there's another month of sales where Tom sells 100 houses, that might change, right? In terms of the numbers. What I look at is trends. And trends, I can definitely see Melbourne is still kind of like a bit flatter. This is for the whole of Greater Melbourne, so not just Melbourne CBD. It's a little bit flatter. Whereas Bendigo, that is definitely more affordable, is going up. So if I was an investor and I was thinking, do I go to Bendigo? Do I go to, and I've put another LGA just to compare, which one do I go to? Definitely the one in the red will be my pick. And I do this often when it comes to investing. I would say to my team, I said, all right, I need to figure out, because we've got a client and the client have said to us, I can't make up my mind between investing in Whitsundays, Tamworth or Ballarat. Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, right? So what I did was, can you do me one of these, but blind? So see how it has the legend? Bendigo, Greater Melbourne, etc. My team ran it without that on the bottom. right? So that I don't know which line is what. And based on just those lines, I am then able to go, right, it's the purple line, potentially, or it's the grey line, because it's the more affordable one and it has better growth. And then they'll tell me, they said, oh, Asti, that's that place. So that's kind of sometimes what I do with my investor clients, is when they say to me, I'm thinking about potentially investing in these 5 different places, but I don't know which ones to go to. They come to me, they come to Tom. Tom comes to me and say, hey, Asti, I've got this client, need to know this. I run this blind. And it's just different colored lines. And you can go, yep, go to the yellow one. And then I'll tell you which one is that yellow line. So keep in mind that we are able to replicate that for any suburb. So if you are thinking, yes, I want to invest in Bendigo, but I can't make up my mind between these 3 suburbs between Bendigo, make sure you contact Tom and his team, because they'll then be able to put you through to me to then get a replicate of this particular graph. Yeah. So again, if you're interested in a particular suburb within Bendigo or a particular postcode, this is the graph that you would like for me to replicate. Rental market, we've talked about rentals quite a bit, between long-term rentals and Airbnb and all of the upcoming sort of changes. Just wanting to say for the whole of the Bendigo Local Council, definitely we're still seeing annual rent growth of about 4.2% for houses and about 9.2% for units. So units are doing quite well at the moment. Again, this is for the whole of Bendigo Council. So if you are interested in specific postcodes within Bendigo or specific suburbs, that's when you contact Tom's team and we can replicate this particular slide for you. This is a favorite of mine because everyone at the moment is asking me, and I don't know whether it's because of it's a TikTok trend thing, if it's a Facebook thing, if it's a Snapchat thing, which I'm not on, but apparently my 9-year-old daughter tells me I need to be on Snapchat, whether or not you should invest in shares or property. Right? I get asked that a lot. And the reason why, because of course with shares, you can get in with as little as like $10 if you want. Right? You can buy a share for $10 or $100 or $1,000, whereas for property, you can't do that unless you're buying bricks, which means that you are the owner of 1 brick out of 10,000 in an apartment somewhere. Right? And that's the only way that you can do shares in a housing market. So we ran the data for Bendigo. And of course, the investment is much higher, right? Because obviously, property prices is much higher than share market prices. But just based on the price alone, so just based on the selling price alone, at the moment, when it comes to whether you go share market or whether you go property, share market is returning about 68.2% over 10 years. Houses in Bendigo, 72.8% over 10 years, and units, 104 over 10 years. So when it comes to the return on that 10-year basis, we definitely are seeing a much stronger return for the property market as opposed to the ASX market. The other thing that we have to remember with ASX is because it's shares of companies, if there's anything that can happen immediately in the trade world, so if there's suddenly like a trade agreement, a tax, a tariff, or whatever it might be for a particular industry, that can impact the share market definitely much quicker than it will ever impact the property market. So that's something that you have to account for as well when it comes to whether you go shares or whether you go the property market. So as investors, there's 3 things that you always need to know. The first one, the capital growth, which we've kind of gone through. The second one is the rental yield, right? Whether it's houses or a unit. At the moment, Bendigo is sitting at about 4% for the whole council, that is. which is definitely much better than Melbourne, which is the purple line. So we can definitely see an increase there on the house rental yield in Bendigo. Good news, great. Again, for that particular slide, it can be replicated for any part in the country. So if there is a postcode or a suburb in Bendigo that you'd like us to run this for you, we can definitely do that. Unit rental yield, it's a bit up and down because of the size of the unit market, but it's definitely trending up, which is great. 6.1% at the moment for the whole of Bendigo Council, which is definitely better than 4.7% for Melbourne Metro. So there, like I said, there's three things that you need to know. The first one is the capital growth. The second one is the rental yields. The last one is the vacancy rates. Because vacancy rates tell you how quick your property is going to be rented. You want it to be as close as possible to zero, right? Because that means that your property is probably going to be rented very, very quickly because there aren't enough rentals or rental homes in the market. The Real Estate Institute of Australia have set a benchmark of 3%. Anything under that is considered to be a tight rental market. Bendigo at the moment for the whole of the LGA or local council is sitting at 1.2, which is around here. So there's been a bit of an up and then now it's gone down. It's always a little bit up and down for Bendigo and we've seen that all the way through. But at the moment it is at 1.2%, which is much lower than Melbourne. So just by looking at this, even without looking at any of that, I would know that I would want to be here more so than here because that is a much lower vacancy rate, which means that my property is going to be rented much quicker. Again, this can be replicated for any postcode, any suburb across the country, or even any postcode within Bendigo itself. So if you would like that, then please get in touch with Tom and the team and we will be able to create one for you. So very quickly, for first home buyers, I'll just skip that. Just the one thing that I want to highlight is that from the 1st of October, there are some changes for first home buyers, right? Unfortunately, I've been told that there's no change in the property price cap for the rest of Victoria. Boo. Because a lot of other regional places are getting an increase in the property price cap. But the one thing that is good is that there's no income cap. Whereas beforehand, you can only access it if your income is under 125 if you're single, or 250 if you're a couple. Whereas now there's no income cap and there's no cap on the, there's no cap on the number of places that can be accessed. Whereas beforehand, it was capped at a certain number. Now it's almost kind of like free for all. Other thing that many people don't know is that even though a couple can apply for it, it doesn't have to be married de facto couple. It can be siblings, it can be cousins, it can be friends, it can be Tom and I if we decide to buy something together. Benefits you, Tom. Or benefits me more like, because he's got more knowledge than me. The other one that many people don't know about is the family home guarantee, which means that single parents can actually be in that range or access it with just as little as 2% deposit, right? And for this family home guarantee, you can be a first home buyer, or you can be someone who was previously married, have had a property together, and then settled that property in your divorce, etc., right? So it's not just for first home buyers. Single legal guardian. Single means that if you were married before, you do have to be divorced. So you can't just be separated. You actually have to give proof of your divorce decree. Legal guardian means that, and I get asked this a lot because someone might have adopted a child, you can still access it. It's not just for natural children, but also adoptive children as well. What else that I really wanted to tell you about this one? This one here. I get asked a lot, can I use my super to buy my first home? The answer is yes, but only if you have done your voluntary contributions as well. Many people don't do voluntary contributions to their super, and then they get kind of surprised that that's part of the requirement, that they must have done voluntary contributions before. Right. Victorian government obviously have their own first home grant, which is up there. The question that I get asked a lot is whether or not you can stack. So can you access the Victoria and the federal government? The answer is you can, but you have to meet the eligibility criteria. And the one eligibility criteria that sometimes make people kind of stop is that for the Victorian one, you can only do it for new builds. So that's off the plan, new products. Whereas for the federal one, it can be new builds and old stock. So if you're gonna stack the two, then you're gonna have to go with new builds. So that's sometimes what stops people stacking, is because they might want a particular home that is lower priced because it's an older stock. So the good news though is under 650, quite a lot of Bendigo sales from 2024 and 2025 actually fits within that. Whether it's houses or units, about 90% of sales in Bendigo fitted that. And almost most of units fits under that 650 cap. So it's awesome. I know it's awesome because in my case, in Brisbane, we've been raised to $1 million and only 13% of house stock is eligible under that $1 million. Whereas in Bendigo, it's 650 and there's a lot more space for first home buyers to play in. So what can we expect? Cash rates, whether or not it's going to happen, right? I don't know if you can see the pattern, but the pattern seems to be low, hold, low, hold, low, hold, you know, like cut, hold, cut, hold, cut, hold. Like that seems to be the pattern that we're going with at the moment. Like I said, the next one is next week, 29th to 30th September. Mostly they make the decision based on quarter data, and we don't have the September quarter data for CPI yet, so that's for inflation rate. After that, it's the 3rd of November, so there's no meeting in October. So whatever they do in September, there's no meeting in October, so it will hold in October, and then November, December, right? So in the November meeting, they'll definitely have the September quarter data for inflation rate. So they might choose to do something then, or they might choose to do something in December. It's just going to depend on what that inflation rate is going to be. Development, which something that we're very blessed in PRD in the sense that we are able to access every single development that is happening across the whole country. Whether it's in Bendigo, whether it's in Brisbane, Melbourne, Perth, anywhere, we're very blessed that we're able to see every single development. And when I say every single development, I literally mean every single development. The green infrastructure is anything that is funded by the government, whether it's local, state, federal, or joint. So any new local hospital, schools, a new bridge, a new pothole being stuck together, a new road, anything that is for the public, we can see. Mixed use is anything that has two uses. So maybe it's an office at the top and shops at the bottom, or apartments at the top and offices, or whatever it might be, right? Residential is pure residential, so just townhouses, or just houses, or just units. Commercial is anything of a commercial nature. So this building, like the hotel, a new KFC, which apparently is what I've been told we're getting for dinner, a new subway, or a refurb of something, or actually building a new private school. Mine, honey. She was just like her ears perked up when I said KFC for dinner. But basically anything of a commercial nature we can see, right? As even as little as like a new addition of a car park in like a shopping center or something. And industrial is your storage units, warehouses, industrial sheds, that type of stuff. So for the whole of Bendigo Council, and I will put a disclaimer on this, is that 2025 and 2026 is a moving chart, okay? Because obviously developments can be added, some developments can be taken out, some developments can be deferred, etc. But we're definitely seeing that there's more and more spend. So these pie charts are actually based on the investment dollars in each of the projects that we've then calculated together. We're definitely seeing more and more spend on infrastructure as opposed to, say, residential. And what that means is that it's great for the people who are currently living in terms of service, livability, maybe better bridges, better roads, all of that kind of stuff. But what it does mean for the property market is that there aren't enough houses, townhouses, units being built. And you can, what we've done here is we've just mapped something that we love doing is maps. And we can definitely, like I said, see pretty much almost everything that's about to happen. These are just some of the top projects that we've been able to focus on. So whether it's a solar farm, whether it's a primary school, whether it's warehouse units, whether it's a state government solar farm, there's a lot of solar farms about to happen, Tom. Some new dwellings, housing development, mixed use, whether it's townhouses, hotel, restaurants, shopping, retail, new apartments, we can see it all. Right? So that's what we mean by that we're able to see literally every single project that's about to happen. And when I was talking about the numbers of we don't have enough houses, this is what I mean. Now again, 2025 and 2026 are projections as of the end of July, because this is when we did the download, and it will change as the months go on. But as you can see, some dwellings, but definitely more so for units and apartments, like 195, 35 townhouses, 88 dwellings that we can see, and definitely a lot more land lots coming into the market. So Bendigo is not alone in this. One of the things that I do as a chief economist is that I run this particular slide for literally every single, I can't remember how many PRDs we have now, 70, 80 PRDs across the country. And this is the kind of numbers that I'm seeing, whether it's Bendigo, whether it's Whitsundays, whether it's Albury and Wagga in New South Wales, whether it's Tamworth, whether it's Adelaide, whether it's Hobart. Literally the same type of patterns where most are either land lots or units, apartments, as opposed to townhouses and dwellings. So as you can see, based on that and the fact that there's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of commercial development coming into Bendigo, when it comes to why investing in Bendigo and capital growth, this is literally the hotspot for investment. So at PRD, just to go quickly, this is me and my kind of like main team. We've grown from 5 to 10 in the past 3 months, which is awesome because we have to cover the whole country. We do have some reports that have just come out that are my favourites. So the Australia Economic and Property Report for second half 2025 have just been released, and that basically looks at all of the indicators across the country, across the economy, across real estate to kind of guide you for the rest of 2025 and 2026. Favorite of mine, because this particular report, we look at every single council in Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. No council gets left. And we run the numbers on their current prices, their growth, their rental yield, their investment, their vacancy rates, the amount of development that's happening in that area for every single council across those 3 states. And we nominate the top 10 based on affordability, livability, and development. So I highly recommend that. You can access it there, prd.com.au research hub. All of our reports are up there, whether it's Bendigo's, whether it's Ballarat's, whether it's Whitsundays, whether it's Albury, whether it's Perth, whether it's Brisbane. And I'm one of those people who just believes that knowledge is power, which means that it's all there for you to download and, take from it, research it, read it, and make decisions from it. And that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashley. That was fantastic. And as I said at the start, a lot of knowledge and insights that we would very rarely get the opportunity to probably take. I think in closing on where the market's at in Bendigo, from a temperature on the ground, we are definitely seeing further drive in that marketplace. And when I was talking about buyers agents before, that would probably represent somewhere around 30%, I think, of sales roughly across Bendigo at the moment. And they're first to market, so they're yield shopping. They're not shopping with any emotion. So they're the people that generally early will drive that marketplace and create activity. And buying on yield purely can be quite a dangerous thing for the local consumers, because we sit back and watch. We watch the capital value get driven, the yield comes back, and then the locals start to enter the market for investment. So I guess my thoughts are that the sooner we're out there as local people, if we're wanting to invest in our backyard over the next 6 months, the better. And what we do see with a lot of these tenancies, we're driving yield back. So we get to the first cycle of a tenancy coming through where we can increase rents, and rents increase dramatically. So you would predict fairly comfortably on the cycle that when we go through this time next year, the opportunities there for rents to increase anything from probably 4 to 7%, we're more than likely to see a significant shift, which will put pressure on again. So the good news is we're in a really good marketplace. You would expect, Asti, over the next 5 to 10 years, it would be much the same. So any trepidation around investing in Bendigo should certainly be removed, I think, and the sooner you get into the marketplace, the better. So before I thank everyone for coming, are there any questions for me, which I always have to ask with trepidation?
Have you seen any uptake in the small second dwelling?
Not as much yet. I think that's a trend that'll certainly come. I mean, and that's probably a reflection of the rental unit market. And when you're watching, that's almost the poor system. So you do get that drive in the housing market of the typical 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 3 and 2s. And that market shifts very quickly from a capital value point of view. And everyone scrimmages in there. And then suddenly we wake up one morning and go, shit, these units are cheap. And then the yield comes in behind it. So if you look back at the trends, and certainly I think we can hand this report out or email it out. If you look at those trends, you'll definitely see capital in existing dwellings move in terms of 3 and 1s, etc. And this gap just starts to appear. And the rental market says, we've got nowhere to go, we can't afford this yield or these prices anymore. They shift into the unit market, starts to drive yield, and we wake up as investors and say, let's go play there. So your runs that can be picked up out of units in that back end can be actually stronger based on the margins than you will get out of housing. It's just watching that shift in that market, and you can see a lot of value there.
How long do you think until we actually see that shift?
We're heading there right now on yield. Dale's in our business development team, and you've seen that?
Yeah, definitely. A lot more people are asking about that second dwelling. So I think it's only natural that we're going to see a lot more of it over the next sort of 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, they're almost retreating back to the unit market, and that's becoming a very competitive market. The only place we're seeing probably stocks sit a little bit longer on market is construction areas. So Huntley areas, could be Morong, for instance, where you've got a glut of property hit market at once. And that's in a regular pattern, but you just see it in a row where it'll sit maybe for a little bit longer. The market's a little less competitive because they've got choice, and eventually that catches up as well.
But the unit stock would go very quickly, can't it?
Very quickly, yeah.
But then there's not that, we're not replacing it. stock.
We're not, and you think about where units are positioned, they're generally in a city or they're in fill areas, because that's the high density land as well. So the opportunity for that to grow in the long term versus some of your greenfield sites can be just as powerful. So it's like anything, rentals are generally price based somewhat on location within reason, but the actual property itself, whereas the property is depreciating all the time, the land's appreciating on sale value. So it's trying to find that happy medium. Yeah. Nothing else? Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for taking the night out. It's been a pleasure to have the speakers along, and I appreciate we're on time. We can send you home early and ring the bell. So let's give all the speakers a round of applause. We really appreciate it. We will do this again in the next 12 months just to get a good update, and over the weekend we'll get an email out with all the attachments. If you do have any questions, please reach out. Otherwise, have a safe and enjoyable long weekend. Thanks, guys.